it is not the color of gold, but the prohibition for really has to do with the substance or a natural substance, a material that represents the hoarding of wealth in a variety of ways. But anyway, so I don't. There is no evidence that gold lowers testosterone or sperm count or any of that. I think that's just the type of speculation and or extrapolation that some Muslims are prone towards. But there's no evidence that this is the issue. Rather, there are two related justifications, one more convincing than the other. The first justification that some fuqaha would underscore is مسألة التشبه بالنساء, that men should not imitate women, or men should not adopt practices that would constitute a form of bridging the separation between genders. So in the same way that women don't imitate men, that men don't imitate women. Of course, the main issue with this is that often gender practices and issues of imitations are culture prone and culture related. So, think of something like eyeliner, which for various Bedouin societies or various cultures was something that men, or the practice of a takahhul, where you put a form of eyeliner, something that was considered a masculine practice. In our day and age, when a man would put an eyeliner, it's not considered a masculine practice, it's considered a feminine practice. So, I mean, although there is this issue of men not imitating women and not women, and that being part of the rationale for the prohibition against men wearing gold, that is not the compelling rationale, meaning that when you take all the evidence that was mentioned in the context of the Prophet ﷺ talking about the wearing of gold and men, it is more the interpretive communities, in other words, more the jurists who extrapolated upon this prohibition, who brought up the issue of imitation or the issue of tashabbuh, than the Prophet himself, ﷺ. So in other words, that is not the core reason why men should not wear gold. And that is not, when you look at the evidence, that is not the main rationale or the main illah that is underscored by as an evidentiary matter. Rather, the main issue has really to do with the hoarding of wealth. And the argument goes this way, that already in Islam, not the Qur'an in particular, repeatedly condemns those who hoard gold. And those who hoard gold and And by extension, we can say, platinum is included, jewels, anything that would constitute the hoarding of wealth. Why is that? Because when you hoard wealth, the differences between classes deepen. You do not circulate money in society, and those who are rich remain rich, and those who are poor remain poor. So in my view, for me, if you ask me, I think that the real condemnation in Islam, both in the Qur'an and Sunnah, is the hoarding of wealth, not just in the form of gold, but in the form of anything that constitutes the hoarding of wealth. And of course, at the time at early Islam, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, gold was the backbone of currency. And in order to combat that practice, the tendency for rich people to hoard wealth, the prohibition, and this is something that is often ignored by Muslims because of their relationship with the hadith tradition, the prohibition was not just against the hoarding of gold, whether you wear it or you keep it in a closet, but against the hoarding of other valuable material as well, such as jewelry and diamonds. Can a man not own any piece of gold, but instead spend his money in diamonds and preserve the diamonds? It's the same prohibition, but you just don't hear about it all the time because, as a cultural practice, we modern people are not accustomed to men wearing rings of diamonds. But the same prohibition is there. The same issue is there. So it's not the appearance of gold. It's the principle of the hoarding of wealth and the prevention of the circulation of money. In other words, it's the ailment is stinginess, and the ailment is classism. And then the hoarding of gold and diamonds and is a manifestation of this ailment that we combat by saying, as a principle, we need wealth to be circulating. An exception was created, and this is the best way to think about it, is that it is an exception. An exception was created for women. Now, why was the exception created for women? Because of the fact that the saving of gold and diamonds was a way that women protected themselves from not being provided for by men. If men go to war and they die, or if a woman gets divorced, or a woman loses her husband, or a woman loses her father, it is the gold that she saved and the diamonds that she saved that will often save her from poverty. So it was a concession made to accommodate the particular power dynamics of women at the time, and what continues to be an issue of powerless women, especially women, who find themselves after in the untenable position where they don't have a supporter. Now, if we are being honest with ourselves, if we are approaching the issue looking at the purpose of the law, the moral of the law, the objective of the law, we know that there are women today that, as an issue of power, they are in a position to earn money equal to that of men. In my view, for these women, who are able to earn money like men, they should not hoard wealth in the form of gold and diamonds. And if they do hoard wealth in the form of gold or diamonds, they risk falling into what is haram. Allah knows what their intention is, and you can't hide anything from Allah. If you are a person who could have turned your diamonds and your gold into an investment that creates jobs and that feeds people, and you are just a rich woman who just covets wealth, you're not going to escape the haram. So let's go back to your friend who converted. The traditional jurist in me remained, I'm suspicious of anyone that hoards gold, but I understand it, and I know that women have an exception as long as it remains within reason for the purposes of zina and for the purposes of zina, what do you call it, zina, fashion, and the purposes of security. But just keep in mind that Allah knows who is truly insecure financially and who has turned the practice into a monopoly of wealth and a form that becomes haram. But for men, it is very difficult for me having the type of ahadith that have a very clear statement that condemn men wearing gold, for me to say, well, since now since now gold doesn't define the value of currency, it's okay. That would be very difficult for me because of the existence of so many precedents that prohibit gold for the wearing of gold for men. So all of these precedents create a serious pause in me, and unless I have a very good reason to ignore existing precedents, I would have to adhere to these precedents. And I don't have a very good reason to ignore these precedents. I mean, there is enough evidence that men should not wear gold, in part because we want to uphold that principle of circulation of wealth, and in part because it has been a long established practice among Muslims that men should not wear gold. Now, having said that, I see converts in a very different light, and I see fiqh in non-Muslim countries where Sharia is being introduced or Sharia is being practiced in non-Muslim context in a different light than I do in Muslim countries. When I see someone who has been born a Muslim, raised a Muslim, in a Muslim society, wear gold, that carries with it various connotations about the morality and ethics of that man. Very different. The message it conveys, the social message, the communal message it conveys about this man and their relationship to Islam, that is very different than the message that is communicated when you have a recent convert to Islam in a non-Muslim lands. When it comes to recent converts to Islam, we must have a sense of priorities. If it is far more critical that they first understand what a shahada is. It is far more critical that they first develop a relationship with salah, that they develop a relationship with dhikr, that they develop a relationship with sawm, that they develop a relationship with the Quran. And wearing something that is either gold, like a ring that is gold, a gold ring is a very modest hoarding of wealth. So it is not worth making a big issue about it. Or something that is a gold plated ring in non-Muslim countries could have a very different cultural meaning than it does in Muslim countries. And so it doesn't mean that you want to be perceived with feminine attributes, and it doesn't mean that you don't care about the poor, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you are, flipping flipping the those without means in society. We have to take the universe of meanings for that practice in a non-Muslim country into consideration. And all of that would lead me to say, I just don't understand the mentality of Muslims who go to a recent convert, who is trying to develop a relationship with their faith and make a big deal about what they're wearing on their hand. I mean, do you really think that Allah looks at this human being and says, of all the issues that I am going to hold you accountable for, I'm going to give priority to that ring in your finger? If this man truly understands their faith, they will come to a day, the day will come where they will be able to answer this question on their own. If they develop a relationship with their Islam, and they, read enough books, and they attend enough classes, and they listen to enough halaqas and lectures and so on, they don't need to be told. They will someday decide, this is consistent with me being a Muslim, or this is inconsistent with me being a Muslim. But it is not, every time we choose what to talk to a convert about, we are representing our faith. And it's one thing to teach a convert about what Islam says about hoarding of wealth, and then have them reach the conclusion that my ring constitutes a hoarding of wealth. And it's quite another to come and say, Allah doesn't want you to wear this ring. I mean, why? I often feel that when Muslims approach converts where they exercise their own insecurities about their own faith and their own identity by taking it out on the convert. In other words, when you go to a convert and you want to feel good about being a good Muslim by instructing them about how to be a good Muslim, this really has to do with you. And that's the problem, is that you should not use a convert to feel good about yourself. That's really wrong. And we often miss the fact that the type of iman it takes a human being to become a Muslim often far exceeds the iman that someone who is born and raised a Muslim has. And so really, in many situations, we have nothing we should refrain from educating a convert. We should just basically tell a convert, here's where some good resources, and send them off on journey. But it shouldn't be up to every Joe and Mo to go to a convent and start trying to direct them as to what their faith requires.